Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. Listen, back in the day when I used to work on cable news, as you know, I hosted a show on cable news, a primetime show on cable news for 5 years. I had a weekly segment that we did every Friday afternoon, or every Friday evening, I should say. It was always the most popular segment of the week with the audience. And maybe that was because it was my favorite segment, actually, too. And in this segment, we highlighted shocking stories that the mainstream media refused to report. The environment of media was a little bit different back then. There weren't so many alternative sources. X was not a platform of free speech, so there wasn't always an avenue for, the underreported stories to see the light. So we did this segment every week. Well, today, wait until you see what story the mainstream media has the audacity to cover up. This is happening today. Also, back last year on June 9th of 2025, so what is that, 11 months ago, I told you that Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles is a trained political warlord. And I chose those words very carefully when I used them last June. I am going to tell you today what I told LA mayoral candidate Spencer Pratt and his team this week about LA Mayor Karen Bass. And also, remember about 2 weeks ago when we sat here together and did an episode about Ilhan Omar's daughter, Isra Hirsi, the daughter that went on, you could call it a brigade, you can call it a pilgrimage to communist Cuba. And Ilhan Omar posted on social media afterwards saying how proud she was of her daughter. Well, guess what Ilhan Omar's daughter and LA Mayor Karen Bass have in common? You guys are going to love this one. But let's start today with a story that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. This was reported today by the New York Post. This is the headline. The alleged Palisades arsonist, that is the man who set the wildfires in Los Angeles that destroyed the Palisades, became fixated with Luigi Mangione, said blaze started out of resentment of the rich. This according to prosecutors. This is what the New York Post reports. The deranged firebug, accused of igniting the devastating Palisades Fire, had become fixated on Luigi Mangione in the lead up to the deadly blaze, and then allegedly suggested the inferno was started out of resentment of the rich, prosecutors said. Jonathan Rinderknecht, age 30, was obsessed with the accused healthcare CEO killer and had routinely searched free Luigi Mangione and let's take down all billionaires online, court documents show. In the weeks and hours before allegedly sparking the blaze that triggered the catastrophic Palisades Fire, Rinderknecht, who worked as an Uber driver, ranted to customers about Mangione's arrest, too. Many of the defendant's Uber passengers on December 31st, 2024 and January 1st, 2025 described defendant as angry, intense, driving erratically, and ranting about, quote, being pissed off at the world and Luigi Mangione, capitalism and vigilantism, prosecutors noted in a trial memorandum. The New York Post says, when asked why someone would ultimately set the blaze, Rinderknecht allegedly responded that it, quote, would be out of resentment of the rich enjoying their money as we're basically being enslaved by them, and compared such an act of, quote, desperation to the murder for which Mangione was charged, according to the memo. Rinderknecht has pleaded not guilty to a string of federal arson charges for sparking the inferno that leveled 7,000 homes and businesses, caused $150 billion in damages, and left 12 people dead in early 2025. The alleged firebug, the New York Times concludes, has been jailed without bail since his arrest last October. Now, let's just remember the history here. Let's remember the dates. The Palisades Fire technically started on January 7th of 2025 at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, but it didn't actually start on January 7th. It was started by another fire, the Lockman Fire. That was the fire that was started by Jonathan Rinderknecht. That was started on January 1st of 2025. And I believe officials believed that the Lockman Fire had been extinguished, but no, it had not. It ultimately spread to the Palisades and caused the devastating damage. 7,000 homes and businesses wrecked, $150 billion in damages, and of course, the tragedy of 12 people dying. But But this is the part that I actually cannot wrap my mind around. This is what we were told in the days while it's not even the days after the fire, while the fire was still raging, while people's homes were being consumed by flames, while people were actively being killed by this fire. This is what the mainstream media told us. CNN said scientists report the LA fires were larger and more intense because of planet warming pollution. That was January 14th of 2025. Oh, so climate change was the cause, we were told by CNN. NBC News said conditions that fueled California fires were more likely due to climate change, according to a report. That was from January 28th of 2025. Again, climate change is the blame. ABC News reported, quote, "This is how climate change contributed to the California wildfires." The New York Times says LA fires show the limits of America's efforts to cope with climate change. That was on January 10th of 2025, 3 days into the Palisades fire. They were already pointing the finger at climate change. The Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness, said why a wetter atmosphere is making California's fires worse. That was January 9th of 2025. Days, 48 hours into the Palisades fire, and the Washington Post was already telling you that the culprit was climate change. And it was a lie. It was never true. The culprit, the criminal who started this devastating wildfire that left 7,000 homes and businesses burned, caused $150 billion of damage, and left 12 people killed, was a left-wing terrorist. Jonathan Rinderknecht committed his act of terrorism for the same reason that we see the left-wing violence being committed against our politicians and our conservative activists and Christians and Republicans and Trump voters at large right now. He was motivated to set this fire because he bought into the oppressed versus oppressor propaganda that is constantly spewed by the left. This is the same dialectic, by the way, that fuels the trans violence we see in our nation. These transgender identifying individuals are told, if you don't do something, you, the marginalized, are going to be genocided by your oppressors. And who are those oppressors? Well, they're white, Christian, male, Trump supporters. And so what happens is these transgender identifying individuals lash out, they commit violence, they kill, they maim, they harm, they murder the people who they believe are oppressing them. This is the same dialectic that leads to the violence against Donald Trump. You are told your life is at risk because Trump is Hitler. He's a dictator. He's an authoritarian. He's a tyrant. He's a king. And if you don't do something, you'll be squashed like a beetle under his sandal. And so what happens is the people who buy into, the left-wing lunatics who buy into this dialectic, this oppressor versus oppressed, they lash out and they commit violence. This is exactly what happened behind the Palisades fire. It's left-wing terrorism motivated by the same lies spewed by the left and by the mainstream media, by the way. The mainstream media specifically are culpable for propagating this narrative. I mean, it was last week, 10 days ago, that the New York Times elevated Hassan Piker, this left-wing radical. He's the nephew, actually, of the Young Turks founder, Cenk Uygur. Hassan Piker was elevated by the New York Times as if he's some kind of intellectual. And this is what he said to the New York Times specifically about Luigi Mangione, who is the alleged murderer of the United Healthcare CEO, the same Luigi Mangione that the alleged firebug who started the Palisades fire was fixated upon. This is Hassan Piker to the New York Times. Take a look.
Engels wrote about the concept of social murder. And Brian Thompson, as the United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder, the systematized forms of violence, the structural violence of poverty, the for-profit paywalled system of healthcare in this country. And the consequences of that are tremendous amounts of pain, tremendous amounts of violence, tremendous amounts of deaths. And that was a fascinating story for me, because Americans are very draconian about crime and punishment. They're very black and white on this issue. And yet, because of the pervasive pain that the private healthcare system had created for the average American, I saw so many people immediately understand why this death had taken place.
So the New York Times elevated Hassan Piker, who said he understands why so many people understood why Luigi Mangione committed that heinous murder. And this was the New York Times portraying Hassan Piker as some kind of calm, thoughtful intellectual. But this is what Hassan Piker actually thinks should happen to, quote unquote, the rich. Take a listen.
Poor people that they can afford housing in Berkeley. I don't know how that works.
Well, my understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those motherfuckers. Murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude.
Let the streets be soaked in their red capitalist blood. That's the left. What happened? The crime that was committed, the arson that started the devastating Palisades Fire was left-wing violence. It was a communist crime against the rich. The mainstream media doesn't want you to know about that. The mainstream media wants you to think it's climate change, and the solution is more socialism, because that's, of course, how we solve climate change, is a big redistribution of wealth plan, DEI thrown in for good measure, because what kind of, ecologists, what kind of plants don't benefit from a little, racial discrimination and sexism? The man who started the Palisades Fire was motivated by left-wing ideology, just like the assassination attempts against Trump, just like the murder of Charlie Kirk. And the mainstream media foments, they encourage, they elevate, and then they celebrate this type of violence. And God forbid you find out the truth. That left-wing ideology motivated a crime like this. They gaslight you. They say, climate change. Don't you care about our planet? Don't you think that the rich should pay just a little bit more so that we can pass down this earth that we've been given to the next generation, which you probably shouldn't have anyway, because, that's going to cause climate guilt for you, or whatever they say. The mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Doesn't want you to know. This, by the way, is why Spencer Pratt, the one-time reality TV star who was challenging LA mayor, the incumbent, Karen Bass. This is why Spencer Pratt's campaign ad, which, by the way, very impressively, reportedly only took him like 2.5 to 3 hours to film. This is why his ad went so viral. I'm going to show you the ad, and then I'm going to tell you what I told Spencer Pratt's team this week. And then we are going to go back to June 9th of 2025, the day when I told you that Karen Bass is not just some bumbling, stupid DEI hire of a mayor, but actually she is a trained political warlord. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor, All Family Pharmacy. Listen, being prepared is not extreme. It's responsible. Doctors' visits take time. Pharmacies run out. Delays happen. Sometimes medications face gatekeeping from political operatives. It doesn't have to be that way. With All Family Pharmacy, there's a simpler way to take control of your healthcare. It's simple, it's safe, it's secure. It's simple to order from home, safe medications from a licensed U.S. pharmacy, and secure checkout from start to finish. With access to over 400 prescription medications, you can connect with a licensed provider and have what you need delivered right to your door. Fast, secure shipping. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about medications, it's about peace of mind. So you're covered when it matters most. Don't wait until you need it. Plan ahead, stay prepared. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz and use code Liz10 for 10% off. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10 for 10% off. Okay, Spencer Pratt is challenging incumbent LA Mayor Karen Bass. Spencer Pratt, of course, rose to fame in Hollywood. He was a reality TV star on The Hills way back. I mean, this is like something that was on television when I was in high school and college, a long time ago. He's married now. He has children, and he's running for mayor. And I have to tell you, I confess, I am not typically a fan of celebrities who, just because they're bored after the peak of their career, dip their toe in politics. I'm not typically a fan of that, although some political consultants prefer it because one of the elements to a successful politician is name recognition. And if you can have a candidate who already has the name recognition down, maybe because of their celebrity, well, it gives the political consultant, make their job a little bit easier. But I am not typically a fan of celebrities as politicians because I don't think celebrities, by and large, know what they're talking about or have set any kind of good example whatsoever. However, Spencer Pratt might be a little bit different. So I'm going to show you this campaign ad of his that went viral. Then I'm going to tell you what I told his team, he and his team this week. And then we're going to go back to June 9th of 2025. That day when I told you that Karen Bass is not a DEI hire. She is a trained political warlord presiding over Los Angeles. This is Spencer Pratt's viral ad, again, which he reportedly shot in about 2.5 to 3 hours on a very limited budget, highlighting just how elitist Karen Bass, and there's a third contender in the LA mayoral race, Nithya Raman, just highlighting their elitist houses juxtaposed with his own trailer, plus the homeless encampments in Los Angeles. Take a look at this.
This is where Mayor Bass lives. You notice something? Or here, where Nithya Raman's $3 million mansion sits. They don't have to live in the mess they've created where you live. This is where I live. They let my home burn down. I know what the consequences of failed leadership are. That's why I'm running for mayor. For my sons and the rest of us Angelinos that want to stop these corrupt politicians from destroying our city. We are going to get the golden age of Los Angeles back.
Okay, that video, as I last checked on X alone, had something like 15 million views on it. And this is what I told Spencer Pratt and his team this week. If Spencer Pratt pulls this off, if he is able to win as mayor of Los Angeles, the best part of this will be how immediately obvious that it becomes to everyone in the country, not just to residents of Los Angeles, not even just to California residents, but to everyone in the country, people on the right and the left, how immediately obvious it becomes that disgusting, dangerous, degrading cities like Los Angeles are not inevitable. They are, in fact, a deliberate political choice that the Democrats make intentionally to hurt you and to control you. This is also why Democrats are not going to fight fair. They cannot let Spencer Pratt win because they cannot have the American people, by and large, understand that disgusting, dangerous, degrading cities are a deliberate political choice that Democrats have made intentionally to harm and to control you. And this is why we, the American people, even those of us who don't live in Los Angeles, must help Spencer Pratt win in any way that we can offer our assistance. You remember Mayor Karen Bass was not even in the country when the Palisades fires were raging. She was in Africa on vacation. She was in Ghana. And the person, her deputy mayor, who she left in charge of the city in her absence while she was on vacation, she didn't turn around and come directly home when these fires started raging, even though that's her one job as mayor of Los Angeles. This is what her deputy mayor was actually doing while he was supposedly in charge of Los Angeles. This is Spencer Pratt on Joe Rogan's show. Take a look.
Here's really the best part. You know when the mayor was in Ghana as everything was burning down? Do you know who she left in charge? Her deputy mayor. Do you know where the deputy mayor was? The deputy mayor, Mayor Karen Bass's deputy mayor, was on house arrest because he was arrested for calling in a bomb threat to City Hall. This is real life. This is the person that's supposed to take the call because she's in Africa.
Why did he call in a bomb threat to City Hall?
Great question. So that's who the type of people we're dealing with. So when they're like, "Oh, Spencer, you don't have the experience to be mayor," well, I promise my deputy mayors that I have on deck, they aren't calling in any bomb threats to City Hall. So we're already starting ahead of the curve. Also, I'm not going in to steal taxpayer money. I'm going in to stop all this. So again, I really believe there's enough common sense people that see that I'm not doing politics. I don't want to do any of this politics it's a job. These people are career politicians. I never wanted to be a career politician. Before my house burned down, I was selling my healing crystals. Just to be clear, they have no magical powers. They all burned in my house. So anybody, you're buying them, they, I thought that had protection energy. They don't. So, and feeding hummingbirds and taking my kids to school. That was my dream life. And they burned it down. And now they have their worst nightmare coming to just undo the whole thing.
Former Los Angeles Deputy Mayor of Public Safety agrees to plead guilty to threatening to bomb L.A. City Hall last year. Now, what was the reason? Brian K. Williams, 61 of Pasadena, is charged in a single count information with threats regarding fire and explosives.
It doesn't have a reason, but it says what he did.
I don't think there's ever a good reason.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would like to hear his reason. Bomb threat. I received a call on my city cell phone at 10:48 this morning. The mail caller stated that he was tired of the city's support of Israel, and he's decided to place a bomb in City Hall. So that's it. It might be in the rotunda. I immediately contacted this. So it was about Israel. Wow.
While Mayor Karen Bass was vacationing in Ghana, while the Palisades fires were ravaging the people of her city, her deputy mayor was on house arrest for phoning in a bomb threat. And yet Karen Bass had the audacity to accuse Spencer Pratt, after his campaign ad went viral, of exploiting people who have suffered the loss of their home, suffered the loss of all of their possessions, suffered the loss of their stability, suffered the loss of their family members and their friends and their neighbors. She has the audacity to accuse Spencer Pratt of just exploiting people's grief for political capital. Take a look.
Honestly, before this, I had never heard of Spencer Pratt. So
well, you aren't missing out on anything, so it's okay, but please go on.
Exactly. But the thing I am concerned and feel about him is that I feel like he's exploiting the grief of people in the Palisades, and I think that's
right.
Reprehensible. That's the main thing. And I think he is about his own celebrity. He's famous now again.
He's exploiting the grief of the people who lost their homes in the Palisades. Spencer Pratt was one of the people who lost his home in the Palisades. This is how he responds to Karen Bass. And then I'm going to show you how the Democrat cartel in Los Angeles actually tried to exploit Spencer Pratt's the reality that he is a victim of this Palisades fire and has no home. It burned to the ground, and they tried to exploit him to render him ineligible for even running for mayor. This is Spencer Pratt responding to Karen Bass. Take a listen.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Karen Bass forgot that she let my house burn down and my parents' house burn down, and I had actual neighbors burn alive across the street from my childhood home. The only grief is my grief, my community's grief, that I initially started this fight on behalf of. And she forgets I have received 2 community advocate awards from the Pacific Palisades community. So it's the most insane, psycho, diabolical thing I've heard in a minute, but it's not shocking. This is the same woman that will allow 7,000 houses to burn to the ground, 12 people to burn alive, and then actively cover it up, get caught covering it up, and then say that the LA Times is lying, even though they have the emails where she's altering the after action report, which, as far as I'm concerned, is obstruction of justice. So it's disgusting. It's disgusting. The fact that she's trying to think that I want to be in this position. I want to be back in my life that she let burn down. And that's why I got into this race, because somebody like her should not be in a position of power ever again in history.
Karen Bass, the trained political warlord, we'll get to that in a moment, is so frightened of Spencer Pratt because he is simply speaking the truth that the city of Los Angeles tried to tell Spencer Pratt that he wasn't eligible to run for mayor because of his residency issues, because his house burned down. So they tried to tell him that he didn't have residency at the address that would have rendered him eligible to run for mayor of Los Angeles. And so this is what he did instead. Take a look.
I wasn't eligible to run for mayor because my house burned down. This was last week. No, I'm not kidding. This is for real. So I call the city clerk and I say, hey, the LA Times is reporting that I know I'm eligible. Everybody knows. It's like saying that 7,000 people's houses burned down now can't vote.
Right.
Because she burned your house down, you can't vote for her. So he's like, of course you can run. I said, anybody can call and ask this? He's like, yes, it's on our website.
They tried to tell him that he wasn't allowed to vote because he's not a resident there, because his house burned down, because they let his house burn down, because the person that set the fire in the first place was a radical leftist who hated the rich and was fixated on Luigi Mangione. Meanwhile, the third candidate in the race for LA mayor, Nithya Raman, rolled her eyes and said whatever when a mom presented. By the way, she's a city council member at the moment, Nithya Raman. When a mom presented at a city council meeting concerns about homeless drug addicts shooting up heroin, defecating, and exposing themselves to children outside of school, Nithya Raman's response was to roll her eyes. Take a look.
I don't think a kid's going to be safer because a tent is 500 feet away from a school. You know, it just doesn't.
Crazy Councilwoman Nithya Raman saying it doesn't matter if homeless drug addicts are shooting up, defecating, and exposing themselves to your kids right in front of their schools. Not only did she just vote against clearing encampments again in Venice 2 weeks ago, when you, the concerned mom, voice your objections, she rolls her eyes and says, whatever. This radical socialist is a serious threat to your kids, and she must be stopped from being mayor. Lord only knows how much worse she will get with that power.
Not only did Nithya Raman vote against removing the tent cities, the homeless encampments, do you know what's in the homeless encampments? Spencer Pratt says when he wins the mayoralty, he will be bringing in the CDC, because within these homeless encampments are medieval diseases that you didn't even think existed anymore, but are now running rampant in these tent cities in LA, thanks to the politicians, the Democrats, who allow them to. Take a look.
I'm bringing in the CDC. Los Angeles loved the white suits, and during COVID, they love CDC. I'm bringing in the CDC because you know how much typhoid and medieval diseases are in these encampments that nobody's swabbing? Mayor Pratt is bringing the CDC, and we're going to swab all of them. And once we get those test results back, I promise you, the federal government will be shutting down streets with white tents and hosing things down with chlorine, God knows what, because people are living in the sewers.
Here's why, and I mentioned before, I'm not typically a fan of celebrities dipping their toe in politics because they often don't know what they're doing and are really leftist. Here's why Spencer Pratt is a little different. Here's why he doesn't strike me as your average celebrity. Here's why I'm actually getting excited about Spencer Pratt's future in politics, because he's not just talented at media. You might expect that from a celebrity. That's part of the reason they get into politics, in addition to their name recognition. But Spencer Pratt seems to actually get it. He seems to actually understand. What is it that we always say? If you do not acknowledge the reality of the political enemy that you face, then you will not win. You will not be able to defeat that political enemy. And so it's very close to the top of my litmus test list to ask a candidate or discern if a candidate actually gets it. Do you understand what we are against? Well, Spencer Pratt, when he exposed the financial scam that Democrats in the city of Los Angeles are perpetuating against you using your money, not just in the city of Los Angeles, but if you are a California taxpayer at large, you are being scammed by Democrat council members in Los Angeles. Spencer demonstrated that he's not just exposing something that's a crime. He understood who and what motivated this crime. And this is what I want to see in politics. Take a look at this.
Los Angeles, are you aware that socialists in LA city government are stealing your money?
We just finished doing a tour of the site with the Bureau of Engineering and the Bureau of Contract Administration and our contractors to check out the installation of the 16 new modular homes that will include 64 interim housing beds. Northeast New Beginnings was only possible because my team and I worked to get a grant from the state, $16 million to build 64 new beds in Council District 1 of interim housing.
I'm sorry, what? $16 million for 64 beds?
$16 million to build 64 new beds?
That's $250,000 per bed. So let's forget the fact that the DEA reports that 90% of the homeless population in LA are hardcore criminal drug users.
Especially in Los Angeles, there's a lot of it. How many people are using illicit drugs in the homeless community? I would say it's incredibly high.
20%, 30%.
Of the overall problem?
Yeah.
over 90%.
And let's pretend for a second that these people just had some medical bills come in all at once that made them lose their job, and that they're a single mom and they just need to float 3 to 6 months of paychecks to get back on their feet, 3 to 6 months of the median income, like $15,000 to $25,000. We're spending $250,000 per bed. You could just give them that money and they'd be set for 5 years. What the hell are we doing? These crazy socialists on the city council are legitimately just stealing our tax dollars and doling it out to their friends, and they rub it in your face too. She jokes about covering up the graffiti with the nice painting.
And obviously we're gonna get rid of the graffiti and replace it with a nice paint job to make sure it's welcoming for everybody.
Meanwhile, fire victims in the Palisades are getting their burned out lots vandalized by commie street animals. All of your neighborhoods are riddled with tagging and garbage. No help for you, but we're gonna spend $16 million for 64 homeless people to not have to endure the hardship of seeing a bit of graffiti outside their $250,000 bed. 64 people? There are 64,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. This psycho socialist is bragging about spending $16 million of your money to cater to 0.01% of the homeless problem.
$16 million.
You think these socialists have any interest in solving this? Of course not. Who's vetting who goes into these housing units? Are they drug testing? Are these just going to turn into $250,000 air-conditioned fentanyl tents? Why not just give them the money? I'll tell you why. Because these corrupt DSA politicians can't steal it if they just give it as direct aid. Just like the fire aid scam. They'll never give an individual direct financial assistance. It always has to be laundered through one of Austin Miller's or Nithya Raman's NPOs so their friends can do God knows what with it. It goes to these companies that make these $250,000 units. It's all a scam. And notice, this isn't just Angelinos that are being robbed. She's using state grants.
My team and I worked to get a grant from the state.
So pay attention, folks. Socialists in Los Angeles are everybody's problem. Goblins like Eunice are gobbling up all your tax dollars, and they're coming for more. This is how socialism starts. Vague platitudes that feel nice and soften the language so the real problems never get addressed. It's the velvet glove for the iron fist. These are just people experiencing homelessness.
People experiencing homelessness?
Why do they always talk like this? Why can't they just talk like a normal person? Because socialists always lie. Always. We need to end this failed experiment and put a stop to this fraudulent waste of our tax dollars. If you live anywhere in California, you need to support my campaign for mayor of Los Angeles, because this theft of your tax dollars will only continue. Go to mayorpratt.com and help me put an end to this scam.
$16 million.
You tell me. He sounds like one of us. He's not just regurgitating establishment rhino talking points. He's not just throwing red meat to a base that he secretly detests, like so many Republican candidates, especially in blue cities and states, often do. He's explaining the hybrid of ideology and criminal scam that allows Democrats to get away with what they're doing, intentionally harming and controlling you in the process by letting your cities be disgusting and dangerous while they get rich. He gets it. He named DSA. How many shows in this country, how many podcasts talk about what's behind the DSA? Talk about the leadership structure and their goal and their tactical maneuvers within the Democrat Party and once they get in office. We sit here and we untangle that. We get it. Not very many politicians do. But Spencer Pratt does. And he did something that I could probably count on one hand the number of politicians who have actually been able to combine two elements of politics that always should be combined and very rarely are. Take a listen to this clip and I will show you what I mean.
Been campaigning, the thing that has impacted me the most is meeting hundreds and hundreds of moms, and they're the most activated people in Los Angeles right now. And you know why? Because they don't feel safe. Moms send me messages with stories and videos that are so disturbing. If I were to share them on my accounts, they'd get banned. Crazy drug addicts exposing themselves to their children, hardcore drug use, assaults. It's shocking what LA moms have to endure because of the reckless policies of Karen Bass and Nithya Raman, who really just don't care about their concerns. It's it's really shifted my vision in a very real way. I'm realizing that my true mission as mayor is to protect our moms. They need to feel safe. They're scared to just walk their baby stroller to the park and enjoy the weather. They're scared to grab their mobile order at Starbucks. They're on pins and needles sending their kids off to school. I'm sorry, but how have we accepted this? As a man, as a father, nothing is more important than the safety of my children and my wife. Women and children first. We have that maxim for a reason. It's true in an emergency, and it's true for this election. Women and children first. If I accomplish nothing else as mayor, it will be to make moms and their kids feel safe in the city of Los Angeles again.
This is absolutely outstanding. It's outstanding morally, and it's outstanding politically, which is a hard duo to accomplish simultaneously. And not only is it a hard duo to accomplish simultaneously, most politicians don't even try. Morally and politically, Spencer Pratt gets it. And he gets how the Democrats are running their scam and what motivates them. This excites me to see in a politician. I don't get excited about politicians very often. This excites me to see, even from somebody who got his start in reality TV of all places. So now let's go back to June 9th of 2025, 11 months ago, almost 1 year ago. I told you that LA Mayor Karen Bass, this was during the violent riots in Los Angeles, the anti-ICE riots. I told you that LA Mayor Karen Bass is a trained political warlord. She's not just a bumbling DEI hire. And I want to go back to that for a moment because it is especially pertinent to this moment today. But first, I want to thank today's second sponsor, Preborn. Mother's Day is coming up in just a couple of days. It's one of the most beautiful moments of the year to share life-changing news. You know, maybe you've seen it. A family gathered around the table, someone stands up and makes an announcement, you know, I'm engaged or I'm going to be a new mom in the new year. And it's when that happens, anytime that happens, it's one of my favorite moments, whether it's a friend or a family member or an extended family member, there's just nothing like it. But for some women, Mother's Day feels very different. Instead of celebrating, they're carrying a secret and they feel afraid. They feel alone. They feel unsure of what comes next. That's why Preborn exists, because when a woman sees her unborn baby on an ultrasound screen and hears that tiny heartbeat, she's more likely to choose life for that child than not. It's an amazing, miraculous moment. This Mother's Day, you can help bring the gift of life to both babies and mothers in crisis. The goal of the Liz Wheeler Show is to sponsor 600 ultrasounds. One ultrasound is just $28. 5 ultrasounds are $140. Every penny goes towards loving mothers and babies well. Will you join us this month? Simply dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. And when you say the word baby, understand that is a little baby boy, little baby girl that you are saving through your love and generosity, your willingness to take action and share your time and treasure with others. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/Liz. That's preborn.com/Liz. Okay. Almost 1 year ago, on June 9th of 2025, I told you that LA Mayor Karen Bass is not just a bumbling DEI hire. She is a trained political warlord. And I chose those words very carefully because of Karen Bass's own history. Karen Bass once served as the vice chair of the National Endowment for Democracy. You might know it as NED. Mike Benz has talked a lot about the National Endowment for Democracy. It is a U.S. government-funded NGO, gets its money from U.S. aid, notorious for meddling in foreign governments under the banner of promoting democracy, hence its name. But truthfully, in reality, its sole purpose is fomenting color revolutions abroad. Karen Bass, as vice chair of the National Endowment of Democracy, was once right in the middle of that. This is what I showed you about Karen Bass's history last June. Take a look. Republican again. Thanks to Data Republican for uncovering Karen Bass's nefarious expertise. It's important to understand that the portrayal Karen Bass as this DEI hire, this bumbling mayor during the wildfires. That's not exactly accurate. She is a political warlord. She knows exactly what she's doing by fomenting and encouraging and excusing these violent riots, and by trying to gaslight you, and by using rhetoric against Donald Trump that, I mean, think about how this is juxtaposed. It literally said at the beginning of the clip, Karen Bass did, that the violence being committed by these rioters in Los Angeles is their First Amendment right. So she is redefining their violence as speech. And yet what she's doing to Donald Trump is she's saying his speech is violence. She is setting a standard where if you dissent from an open borders policy, you have suddenly become a criminal. And this is very, very intentional. Again, we've talked to Mike Benz on this show extensively about USAID. USAID is not an agency for international development. It's not an agency that supports democracy. It is a front of the CIA, and its purpose is to foment color revolutions. Then when we had Elon Musk and Doge uncovering what we suspected, like we knew, but they provided proof that USAID-funded NGOs don't just target foreign governments. They have been weaponized against us. This is Karen Bass's goal. It's not just to topple the Trump administration, it's to topple you, because that's what Donald Trump represents. He represents you. She was the vice chair in charge of this political warfare, and now look at her, condemning the lawful deportation of criminal aliens by ICE, fomenting the violent riots in Los Angeles. Karen Bass's area of expertise is regime change. Karen Bass's history of employment is fomenting color revolutions to topple regimes. Make no mistake, she applies those same tactics here in the United States in her role as mayor of Los Angeles. Last year, she, as I mentioned in that clip, she set a standard where if you dissent from an open borders policy, you've suddenly become a criminal. This is why it's so important that Spencer Pratt gets it. He understands the reality of the political enemy that we face. Remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about Ilhan Omar's daughter, Isra Hirsi, and her pilgrimage or brigade to Cuba, to communist Cuba? Well, Ilhan Omar's daughter in her early 20s, Isra Hirsi, she traveled with the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, funded by the People's Forum, which is Roy Singham's group, or the group which has gotten $20 million from Roy Singham. Ilhan Omar's daughter traveled with the DSA via the People's Forum money to communist Cuba. The DSA has this really weird lovey-dovey relationship with the Cuban communists, which I suppose makes more sense when you understand what their goal is for the United States. But the DSA does these pilgrimages, these brigades to Cuba under the guise of humanitarian assistance to the Cuban people. They're trying to circumvent, the evil blockade that's been implemented by President Trump. But actually, the real reason that they take, especially young people, the DSA takes young activists and revolutionaries to Cuba is for communist indoctrination. It is for revolutionary training, because what Cuba is, that is what the DSA wants the United States to be. And you'll remember from 2 weeks ago, we talked about how the DSA gives money to Cuba. It's not legal to give money directly to Cuba. So what do? Well, they use a fund that's ostensibly to fight hunger, which is allowed, humanitarian assistance. But the reality of that is the money goes directly to the communist government, not to the people who are starving. The elitists are fat and the people are starving. All the money goes to the government of Cuba. Well, this fund that the DSA has arranged with a couple of other partners is called the Venceremos Fund. The Venceremos Fund, that of course, that word, that Spanish word means we shall overcome, a very communist type of rhetoric. The Venceremos Fund, remember that name, Venceremos Fund. Now pivot to Karen Bass. Karen Bass, when she was 19 years old, she also did what Isra Hirsi did. She went on a brigade to communist Cuba at the age of 19. She then went back several subsequent times. Well, Karen Bass traveled to Cuba with an organization called the Venceremos Brigade. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? The Venceremos Brigade is the group with whom Karen Bass traveled to Cuba, and the Venceremos Fund is the loophole through which the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, give money to communist Cuba. Well, it gets even more interesting, The Venceremos Brigade of today, this of course was back in the 1970s when Karen Bass traveled to Cuba at age 19. Well, as of 2024, the Venceremos Brigade, which still exists, is financially sponsored by, guess who? The People's Forum. The People's Forum, who also sponsored the Code Pink DSA Brigade to Cuba, on which Ilhan Omar's daughter traveled. Karen Bass, of course, you might recall, when Fidel Castro died several years back, Karen Bass called him Commander Jefe, which is a term of endearment, a complimentary name at his death. In fact, it's so obvious that it was a term of respect for a communist dictator that she was challenged on that and had to pretend to walk it back, that, she doesn't buy into, Castro's politics. But of course she does. Of course she does. This is who Karen Bass is. Karen Bass is not a bumbling DEI hire. Karen Bass is an indoctrinated communist trained in the revolutionary tactics of Cuba. If you go to Cuba, or if you live in Cuba, and you are not a member of the elite and you have a medical need, your opportunity for healthcare requires you to go to a hospital where you have to bring your own light bulbs, you have to supply your own blanket, you have to bring your own surgical instruments. The operating rooms are filled with overflowing plumbing, sinks clogged with plumbing, rusty instruments. You are not so likely to get well if you go to a hospital, if you are a regular person in communist Cuba. And this picture of what it looks like in a hospital in Cuba, if it reminds you of the tent cities in Los Angeles, that's because it is the same thing. It's motivated by the same ideology. Karen Bass traveled to Cuba, indoctrinated in communist, trained as a revolutionary, imported that ideology, that communist belief system to Los Angeles. The reason the elites in Cuba control the people the way that they do is because that's what communism has to do. Communist dictators are oppressive, they're authoritarian, they're tyrannical. They must render their people powerless, and they do so by imposing poverty and disgusting ill health, despicable conditions on their city so that people are simply scavenging just for survival, so they don't have the strength to overthrow the communists who rule them. So Karen Bass and Nithya Raman's refusal to remove tent cities is not a coincidence. This is not incompetence. This is not, Karen Bass is not a bumbling DEI hire. The disaster for LA that exists in LA at this moment is what Karen Bass wants for that city, because she is a communist political warlord. Spencer Pratt's campaign against Karen Bass is working. It's working. It's effective. Because the people living in Los Angeles, if you are untouched by politics because our nation is so prosperous, it might take a lot for you to switch your vote from a Democrat to a Republican, because everything's hypothetical. And if you hypothetically agree with Democrats, it's going to take a lot for you to shift to a Republican. But if you're a Democrat and you are touched by politics, you have been impacted by the Palisades Fire that was started by a man who was fixated on Luigi Mangione and eating the rich. If your children are unsafe at their school because homeless drug addicts are defecating and exposing themselves outside of the city's schools, if you can smell the tent cities and the medieval diseases that are working their way into the city through these homeless encampments that don't have to be there, then maybe you are going to change your mind. And some Angelinos already are. This is a good example.
Hearing Spencer Pratt being so passionate about being mayor, listen, anything's better than Karen Bass. You know what I can tell you what I saw? I live in like a nicer side of town. I drove early morning after driving someone to the airport, came back home. 3 homeless people I saw defecating. Like, not even like privately defecating, pulling down their pants, butthole out to the street, defecating. So you know what? That's a real problem. I feel bad for them. You know, it's like, oh, where do they go? Well, they don't just pull your pants with your butthole to the street. So I'm voting for Spencer Pratt now.
And she's far from the only one. The Democrats cannot let Spencer Pratt win. Because if they do, it will become immediately obvious in Los Angeles, in California at large, in every blue district and city and state in the entire country that disgusting, dangerous cities are a deliberate political choice that Democrats make intentionally to harm you in order to control you. I hope Spencer Pratt wins. All right, guys, make sure that you are subscribed to this show, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. On X, I'm Liz_Wheeler. And on Spotify, we are The Liz Wheeler Show. If you could give us a 5-star review on Spotify while you're subscribing, I would be most appreciative of that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz